Hey family, this is QuietStormzzzSpeaks. It has been exactly 64 days since I have recorded a podcast recording. And a lot has happened in that time. The last recording I made was April 16th. And as I mentioned before, I was in the process of packing and downsizing, purging, donating, and getting ready to move. And I was moving from my 4-bedroom home and hitting the road full time as a digital nomad, but more importantly, to share my story of redemption. So I'm on a nationwide tour, and my first stop was I drove from Texas to Arizona to stay with my children for a while, to visit them and my grandchildren, and spend Mother's Day with them. And I'm so grateful that I did, because I hadn't anticipated how hard this Mother's Day would be for me. As I've explained before, I'm grieving the loss of 2 of my children. The most recent was my son, Christian, who passed away last July 2022, suddenly. We had no chance to be prepared. It happened suddenly, and he was gone. And I've often said that is another kind of grief. With my daughter, Brittani, she was diagnosed with cancer. We had a 5.5-year journey, and we saw the progression, and we were prepared. Although it was still excruciatingly hard, we were prepared. We knew. And with Christian, we just, none of us knew. He didn't know, I don't believe. So Sunday, Mother's Day this year, I think it was May 15th, I had a wave of grief hit me. I'm sorry, it was actually May 14th, 2023. I had a wave of grief hit me, and grief comes in waves, and there are different phases of grief as well. So for the last 8 months, from July to May, 10 months, I was in a cycle of phase 1 of grief, which is unbelief. Shock, unbelief. I just couldn't believe that my son was gone. And so it took me 10 months to process that, right? And Mother's Day comes. I did everything I could to stay busy. And then a wave of grief came, and it nearly knocked me out. So usually what I do when I'm grieving, when waves come in, I've learned to revert to my plan. It's called a recovery plan that I made through counseling, through therapy. Something to do to recover quickly so that you're not drowning in a wave of grief. So the things that are on my list are things that are pleasurable to me. I may, color. I love to color. It's very therapeutic. It's very healing. I may listen to gospel inspirational music, which uplifts my soul, my spirit. I may watch something funny on TV. I may cook a meal and enjoy a meal, or enjoy a dessert. One of my favorite desserts is raspberry sherbet with a little bit of ginger ale. So Mother's Day, I decided, because the pain was so great, that I would write and really process my grief. So I want to share with you what I wrote. And I share this in hopes that anyone else who's going through this level of grief, or any kind of grief, maybe it's helpful. I pray that it is helpful. to help you learn to process through strong emotions, but not get stuck and caught up in them. You can feel them, you can honor them, but don't allow them to become you. So this is what I wrote. Today was a really hard day. I tried all day to stay busy, to keep moving and not slow down. I only wanted to feel the joy of this day, and I did not want to sit with my thoughts or acknowledge the deep wound that's in my heart. So I kept moving until I finally sat down to eat dinner and checked my Facebook memories when it hit me. I saw a post I made 6 years ago today, and grief came in like the uncontrollable waves of an ocean. I couldn't explain the heaviness I felt all day until this moment. As I sit and discern this space I'm in, I can honestly say I've been in the denial phase of grief since my son Christian passed away. In this moment, I realize and I must acknowledge that the second stage of grief, which is anger, is upon me. I'm so angry. Acknowledging that is so critical to keep it moving so it doesn't take root. Trust me, that's another critical lesson I learned the first time around. Although I'm filled with so much grace, love, and peace most days, I had to stop and acknowledge that gaping hole that's so very present in my heart right now. I told my girls that I have to allow myself to feel this anger and to let it out, meaning I won't pretend it doesn't exist. Some of the things I'm angry about don't even make sense, but I have to point out the emotion of anger everywhere it exists. I sat down to write down all the lessons I'm angry about in this moment. Write down all the reasons I'm angry in this moment. I'm angry for even having to acknowledge the sudden loss of another one of my kids. I'm angry because I have to sit with the loss of my son. I'm angry for having to watch my other kids miss him and grieve the loss of him. I'm angry and hurt that we even had to speak of grief today and that it seems to have become a part of our lives. I'm angry that it feels very much like an invasion, an intrusion, and an unwelcomed disruption to what should be a joyful time in our lives. As we've been blessed with 2 babies, my grandsons, who have ushered in a whole new generation for us. To now be at this full circle moment of grieving an undeniable, unbelievable loss and devastating blow to our family that just doesn't seem fair. I'm angry about that too. We lived through our Job season for 10 years or more, and I was sure we'd finally reached the end when signs of healing, restoration, and miracles began to show up in our family. Another Job season seems completely unfathomable. All I have to say in this moment, I hold space for myself. No words are needed from anyone. None can provide comfort for me right now. This is a praying moment only. A very necessary part of grief and a beginning point to continue healing, which is the acknowledgement that my son Christian passed away, and I now have 2 kids in heaven. Sometimes I'm not okay. This is one of those times. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned over the years is to give myself tons of grace, to allow space for the unsure times of deep, hard emotions when they come rushing in, to allow each one to teach me what I need to learn, to grow stronger in faith and allow it to eventually pass. This too shall indeed pass. According to Colossians 2, verse 7 in the Amplified Version, the deep roots that are growing throughout this journey will eventually be overflowing with gratitude. I'm not quite there yet, but as it is written, I shall also believe it is true, for I serve the word of God and not my emotions, no matter how deep they go. This is my anchor and manna for today. This is my first Mother's Day without Christian. These are deep roots of grief. Second phase of grief, which is anger. And I'm holding space for my own healing. This is Quiet Storm Speaks. Once again, I wish you well on your healing journey. I hope you are journeying well. I leave you with the highest form of peace, always. And that is shalom. I pray you have shalom in your hearts, your minds, your spirits, and your souls. Thank you for listening. Please stay with me as I continue to journey.